So, if you are already familiar with Death Note and Light, let me give you a quick overview. So, spoiler alerts, obviously, there's going to be spoilers. So, Light is basically this perfect all round person and is very intelligent and also quite caring. However, this all changes when he picks up a notebook called the Death Note and meets a Shinigami called Ryuk, who is basically an angel of death. So from picking up the notebook to the end of the series, Light transforms from what was an innocent young man with a bright future to a ruthless and delusional killing machine. But why does he fail as an anti-hero, and why is his character arc so conflicting and difficult to watch at times? Well, let's get right into it. So the true character arc starts the moment Light picks up the Death Note. Once he discovers the true power of the Death Note, he quickly burdens himself with the responsibility of fixing the world. This is the first small flame of his god complex that will soon burn into an inferno. But this is also the first instance of the conflict of like Yagami. When he confirms the power of the notebook and sees a man who was harassing a woman die because he wrote his name in the Death Note, he's in shock and he's terrified. But he's also optimistic about his new learned power. In the early episodes of the show, Light's motive is somewhat understandable, as he's only been killing criminals. However, his facial expressions and demeanor drastically changed from the innocent boy he once was, and is slowly becoming encapsulated in his belief that he is a god. Also, at this stage, an equally formidable foe to Light, called L, starts investigating the murders, and he can't just be shaken off or outsmarted like the others. So it's a classic example when a formidable force meets an immovable object. So up until episode 7, which was called Overcast, Light is still somewhat a character that can be empathized with. He was a boy who had it all, and after being given a tool of power, his first thought is to use it to remove all the poison from the earth and stop the rotting. He is clearly a delusional idealist, but his intentions are still somewhat understandable. But episode 7 is when Light's ideals and ambition are overshadowed by his desperation and darkness to achieve his goals. In episode 7, Light meets a very kind and sensitive woman who happened to also be an ex-FBI agent called Naomi Misora. She was engaged to the late Ray Pember, a man Light tricked into writing his own name and those of his colleagues in his death note, killing them all instantly. However, still knowing this, Light manipulates and charms Naomi into giving her real identification. After he built trust with her, was even praised by her, as she compared him to L, someone she said she admired. But once Light writes down Naomi's name in the death note, Light showcases that he's nothing like the boy he used to be, and he's fully transformed into a sociopathic killing machine. After the murder of Naomi Misura, it's difficult to say that Light didn't fail as an anti-hero and has instead become the villain of the story. But Light does deserve some credit for his genius, especially for his scheme to outsmart L. Light's plan to revoke ownership of the Death Note to wipe his memories, and the fake rules he got Ryuk to write in the Death Note to prove his innocence, were genius, and shows how accurate his foresight is. Even though he'd become so cold-hearted, it's still hard for any viewer not to admire his intellect at least. Light's ego has been inflating episode by episode, but in the finale, his bubble is only to burst. Near, L's successor, defeats Light by replacing his Death Note with a near identical replica made by Stefan Giovanni. Light shows his true delusions and his god complex that he'd been feeding for so long, but it all comes crashing down when he's shot in the hand. Light scurries his way out of the warehouse while bleeding, but is eventually killed by Ryuk, who writes Light's name in his own Death Note. The show ends when Ryuk says,
"It was good while it lasted. We eased each other's boredom for quite a while." Well, Light, it's been interesting.
which happened to be one of the first words he used to describe light. This also showed that Light was never truly in control or as powerful as he thought he was, as his life was always in the hands of Ryuk, an actual god. So, what do you guys think? Anyone have a different opinion or view? Should Ryuk have shown some mercy to Light? And maybe some loyalty also? I know when I was younger I supported Light, but now, 4 years later, 4 years more mature, I realize how conceited he really was. But anyways, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe, and see you.